After a whirlwind offseason, the Jacksonville Jaguars have finally put on display what their plan is. I'll tell you why I like it so far and how we got here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where our aim is to keep you up to date and invested in everything about the Jacksonville Jaguars, how we got here and where we're going, and that's what we want to do today. The first thing I want to tell you is today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, folks, and create an account, and then use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Hello to the everydayers and hello to the newcomers. We appreciate you being here, and hopefully we'll give you a reason to come back here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, so my vision for today was to kind of encapsulate or in real time show you some of the things that sort of led us here and where we were. And, you know, usually when you have memories, you can look in a photo album to go backwards. We don't have to do that. We got video, right? So I'm going to take you back a little bit with actual video and audio from several Locked On Jaguars podcasts I had when the season ended last season, and give you a little bit of a snippet just to do a little bit of a heat check to see where we are, to make sure our feet are still planted on the ground here on Locked On Jaguars and in Jaguars Nation. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about what to watch for, what to move forward with as we get to training camp. And in the middle of the show, I'm going to really get into and dig into how we got to this point. But first, I want to let you know I can see the vision of the big three. The big three being Tony Boselli, James Gladstone, and Liam Coen. I know y'all saying, what about Shad? Well, Shad is Shad. So, you know, we know who he is. He's the big dog of all big dogs. But I'm talking about the people that have their finger on this team every single day, the people that make the decisions that are going to affect how we watch and what we see. As most of you know, I host a show called The Barbershop that is on Locked On NFL. Also, that is a daily show, is a national show. And we did a show of best off seasons. I named two teams. The Jaguars were an honorable mention. And the real reason I did that is because, well, one, I usually don't talk about my other show on I don't talk about the Jaguars as much on that show. I got to stop myself because it's so easy for me to get caught up into the thing that I do here every single day. But another reason is I think the biggest part of what they did was what they undid, as opposed to what they actually did. And they wouldn't have, the biggest thing that they did was get Travis Hunter, in my opinion. They would not have done that had they not totally undid something prior to that. And that's where I want to sit right here for a minute. This is what I believe the turning point for this organization. And these little small moves don't seem to sometimes resonate with people, but they do when you think about them in totality. They fired Doug Peterson first. When they decided on a Zoom call that they were going to keep Trent Baalke, I thought that was a huge mistake because I didn't feel that they would then do the requisite things that they have now done that has us all so enthusiastic about next season. So I'm going to give you a video in real time. The day after Trent Baalke was let go, a video you all should be very, very familiar with. Check this out. Yesterday, and a crazy day for the Jaguars, as Trent Baalke and the Jaguars separated, and they will no longer be a part of each other. You know, this was just one of those things where everyone it's almost like, you know, you love somebody and you say, okay, we got to go. Let me talk to you for a minute. Your man, you got to leave him here. Everybody's just not meant to go on this journey. Trent Baalke just wasn't the guy to get the Jaguars to the next level. That's why I started the show by thanking him for getting the Jaguars to this point. I think 9 wins unless they got lucky, it was the best that they were going to be. It's more than just picking players. It's about being a leader, somebody that people will run through a brick wall for. That it's almost like also the GM can't be the egomaniac. The GM has to be at the service of the team, and it has to come across that way. It has to feel that way, and it just didn't feel that. How true is that now? And I love doing this in real time because it captures the real raw emotion. It captures the in the moment of how we felt at that time. Now, I don't want you to move too far ahead in thinking about this, but I want you to know where you are right now and how you feel and where you were that day. How relieved you may have been that the Jaguars made a change. It's not about Trent Baalke, the man, personally. This is more about his job, how he does his job. How he does his job has been based on how things have gone for years and years and years. And then how was that going to help us move into something new? I love to be in the moment. I love to try to myopically focus on what's on my plate right now so we can win the day. But you have to first be able to win the day. The Jaguars weren't able to win days. They were not able to win a whole bunch of days. They did, however, eventually start to win those days and start to put them together. You win a day, it turns into a week, right? Win a week, it's 2 weeks and 3 weeks, that becomes a month. And that's how we got here, because it feels like everything the Jaguars didn't have the stink of the past on it. Shad Khan finally got it in his head that what he was going to do was totally separate from everything. Now, I don't know if y'all remember, but there was a Zoom call when he announced that he was moving on past Doug Peterson. Shad was very, very, I thought it was super funky. And even afterwards, I said he was the worst owner in sports, because when people were talking about a clean start, what he kept talking about was, well, what do you mean a clean start? We're going to get rid of 85 people, medical staff, and the strength and conditioning coaching staff. See, and I got on him about that and thought he was being a little snarky. He actually wasn't. And I subsequently sort of gave him the grace of saying that he wasn't being that way. What happened is prior to Doug Peterson, when he hired Urban Meyer came in with a hatchet and said, we need to cut everything. And that's when they changed the entire back office, the entire staff. And he had to watch those people, Shad did, he had to watch those people leave. And ultimately what he did was he watched those people leave for the worst year and the worst disaster we've ever seen. So he kept a lot of folks around that were doing a pretty decent job that he had transitioned to. They went to the playoffs under Doug Peterson. They won 9 more games. And then they had another really, really awful year that meant Doug had to go. But he wasn't going to go and just take an axe to everything else. The thing that I wanted to harp on back then was nobody was asking him to do that. And he hasn't done that. And guess what? It's all worked fine. He eventually did exactly what we all wanted him to do. And by that, I'll talk about it. I'll tell you exactly what I mean. It'll give you a signal of how we got to where we are. And I'll place some more evidence, even evidence of me saying things that maybe didn't turn out to be that way. We'll talk about it here more on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Rugiet. Guys, if you've heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average about 15 minutes. That's what I'm talking about. Look, if traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already tried to switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be subscribed or prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, move along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Talking about a little bit of the past, how we got here, and why the picture is a little bit clearer. We all had questions on who the GM is going to be, who the coach is going to be, what would it look like? All of these things that just kept coming up over and over again. The coaching process. At some point, Trent Baalke was let go. And they had already looked at coaches. They had already interviewed. They were rolling through their interviews. And then Tony Boselli started to speak, and you saw that he was a part of the process, right? So officially, there was a role for Tony that Shad had spoken on in the Zoom call, the infamous Zoom call now that him and Trent were on, that really rubbed a bunch of people the wrong way. It's never too late for somebody to get it right, though. And eventually, after about a 72-hour weird window between Tampa Bay offensive coordinator Liam Coen, him taking himself out of the running for the Jaguars job, and then all of a sudden secret meetings happening. And then we were like, well, man, if they hire a coach before they hire a GM, that means they're going to keep Trent. But now they have announced that Trent's not going to stay. What's next? Yeah, well, what's next is what you're about to see right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars get their man in Liam Coen. I'm Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. It's been a wild roller coaster ride these last few days. First, Ben Johnson says no. Then Liam Coen says no, I'm going back to Tampa. Shad Khan says, hold my beer. Wait a minute. We fire Trent Baalke. We increase this offer. We fly a private jet down to Tampa, and you come back. We'll see about that. And that's exactly what happened. And Liam Coen decided he was not going to be the highest paid offensive coordinator in the National Football League. He was going to be the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And people are ecstatic, except the people in Tampa. But never mind that. Liam Coen comes here with an idea of fixing the offensive line, running the football, and to help Trevor Lawrence and this team and this franchise get to heights that they had never seen. Follow me on Locked On Jaguars for more coverage of Liam Coen, where it is your team every day. This was a sign of something good. This was a sign of a total new direction. This is a hotshot, young, communicating, offensive-minded coach, but it was a bigger signal for something else. This is now the first time we realized that they have a coach. They have Boselli, who was in a consulting role at that time. They don't have a GM, but they were going to get a GM that was coach approved, and that this was going to be a team that was going to be in alignment. This is when it first really kicked in, that they weren't going to hire a strong-armed, old-school GM like the one that they fired, and the Jaguars were willing to move in a different direction altogether. And I liked it. Then there were the candidates. It was Ian Cunningham, who I thought for a long time was going to be here with Ben Johnson. He wasn't. At some point last October, if y'all remember, I played a video back after they hired Liam Coen. I played a video where I kind of pulled off of Ben Johnson a little bit, and I mentioned the fact that Liam Coen was the guy that may start getting a lot of looks around the league and might be the answer for the Jaguars. That was October, November. Don't ask me how I knew, because I ain't going to tell you. But what I started to hear was, if Ben wanted to really go and be in Chicago, that the Jaguars would look towards someone else, someone with a certain background. Offensive coordinator, quarterback whisperer, young, innovative. And Liam Coen was at the top of that list for everybody. Did I say young? Well, guess what? Ian Cunningham didn't get the job. Little young kid named James Gladstone walking around with his football, came from the Rams. It started to pick up steam that he was going to be the GM, and then that happened. And I talked about it. And I'm going to tell you what I said that day. It was a tight race for the GM job in Jacksonville. It was a two-man race, and one guy came down the stretch like Secretariat James Gladstone is the new GM for the Jacksonville Jaguars. According to Jaguars.com, James Gladstone, previously the Los Angeles Rams Director of Scouting Strategy, on Friday was named the Jaguars General Manager. Quote, "It's my honor to introduce James Gladstone as the new General Manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars," unquote. Jaguars owner Shad Khan said. Here's some facts. Gladstone was the Rams Director of Scouting Strategy the last 3 years, spent 9 seasons with the franchise overall. Make sure you check me out each and every day on Locked On Jaguars. All right, so James Gladstone got hired. I was cool with it, very cool with it. And I started to sit here and look at the familiarity standpoint, how there were connections that were even more, that were bigger than the obvious ones about the whole Rams situation. Liam Coen had been with the Rams twice, had 2 different stints with the Rams, and James Gladstone was there. And then I started to hear rumblings that Tony Boselli was a really, really big part of choosing this. Now, I don't know if he had officially been named. I could have easily looked it up, but I'm trying to give y'all this raw, right? I think we knew there was a role. I think we knew it was coming. I don't know if it was official. It could have been official at that time, but it's all a bit of a blur. I guess I could have checked the dates. But we started to now hear that he just blew them away, that Boselli had gotten calls from Les Snead, that he blew them away in the process, and that it was more in line with the direction that they were going, and that Ian Cunningham was a little bit, I wouldn't say old school, but he was a little bit of the, I want it to all be on me type. This is not what they were going to do here in Jacksonville. It wasn't going to be, it's going to be all on me type. There's a lot of things that happened. Free agency kicked in. We started to see the direction that they were going in. They talked about James got the job, and he started using phrases like intangibly rich and sentences like, "We want people to come in and be nothing more than themselves." The last thing he said was game on. And what that meant for me is, how aggressive are they going to be? Does it sound like exciting things are going to happen, but there's going to be a lot of infrastructure and a lot of other things that'll happen? Or will something super, super exciting happen while they're doing all of the infrastructure? I'm going to tell you what happened and how it started to come together, and why Tony Boselli was a huge part of that. And I'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes all of that possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and lower price guarantee that makes the worry and takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming Major League Baseball game. I love Yankees and Red Sox games, man. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL before $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, and it's always guaranteed. Back at it here on Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, talking about how we got to this point and how it all started in the offseason, how we got to where we are, some of the things that happened, some of the big moments that happened, and having the raw reaction from past episodes here on the show. We weren't done yet, though. I remember there were conversations that Boselli and I had off the record over the years. And I was just like, he always said, "Wait, what do you think?" He still asks me that. He'll ask me a couple of times, "Hey, what do you think?" And he'll be honest. And a lot of those things are off the record, and that's where they'll stay. But one thing I will tell you, before he had his official capacity, when he was just doing radio, and he was doing play-by-play on the radio network for the Jaguars. And that's a very, very big deal, by the way. But we would always talk, and I'd be like, Tony, I have no idea why they won't just throw stuff at the offensive line. I mean, just throw a whole bunch of bodies, just go do some serious scouting and put competition in the room. And he said, I agree. I've been saying it for 4 years. Nobody listened. Well, obviously, by them getting things in line and Tony being a big part of it, he would be in a position where people will listen to him. Check this out. New job. Who this? The Jacksonville Jaguars have a new executive vice president of football operations, but the name isn't new. It's an old friend, Tony Boselli. There are a lot of people that may look at this and go, let's talk about experience. The dude's been playing football and has been around the NFL from just about his entire adult life. In fact, I would say ever since he was 21 years old. So he's been around football. He's been in the back halls and the inner workings of the National Football League. Doing radio, people don't understand. You meet with and talk to folks all the time. So it's not necessarily rocket science that someone would think that a player like that is saying like John Elway, just like John Lynch, no difference. No difference at all. The difference is he's really done this in a very, very good way. And unlike those guys where they had total power to do a lot of things, I think the way that they have lined this up between James Gladstone, Tony Boselli, and Liam Coen, it all works. It all works. And they really went infrastructure, not a whole bunch of big names in free agency, guys that they believed in, that James Gladstone believed in, like Diami Brown, to the point where Les Snead even, I think somebody said that it may have been Gladstone that when he signed Diami Brown, Les Snead, I knew you were going to do that. Because maybe that's the guy that he stood on the table for when he was running their scouting program out with the Rams. But in any event, big time guys on the offensive line, coaching staff lined up. And I was still waiting for this huge, huge thing to happen. We went through free agency. They got some nice, solid pieces and players to shore up the infrastructure of the team. And then it happened. It happened. And I can't believe it. The Jacksonville Jaguars under James Gladstone, Tony Boselli, and Liam Coen have made probably the biggest, boldest move in the history of this franchise, and maybe one of the 7 or 8 boldest moves in the draft that didn't involve a quarterback in the history of the National Football League. And I'm happy. I really am. If you'd have told me they gave, in fact, somebody earlier today put up a scenario where the Jacksonville Jaguars were giving up all of that stuff, and I said, you got to be out of your mind. I heard Daniel Jeremiah earlier say they're going to give up a second this year or one next year and then some change. And I was like, they ain't doing that. It's a new day in the National Football League. That is exactly what the Jacksonville Jaguars have done. Travis Hunter, the best player in this draft, one of the most dynamic players we've ever seen in college football, is now a Jacksonville Jaguar. And they said they were going to be bold. They said they were going to get people that were intangibly rich, and he is rich intangibly. He is rich in every single way, on the field, off the field. And remember that thing I told you? Remember I started saying they love those football playing Jessies? How about a dude that wants to play both ways and doesn't want to come off the field? Man, I don't know if y'all can hear it. And sometimes I think we forget how we felt when something happens. And those are things that sometimes pictures can elicit those feelings, but it doesn't. But hearing my voice and seeing the smile on my face and understanding how I was feeling that day, I can only imagine how the fans feel and how the fans felt. That was the bold thing that I was looking for. I was wondering if they were going to be this bold team that chased these headlines and that just did all of these big things like a team in Dallas, or were they going to be a sound organization like the Rams and the Chiefs and the Eagles, where you do your work quietly in the scouting department, you develop players with good coaching and continuity in what it is you believe in. Everyone kind of lines up, even though Howie kind of is in charge. He carries a big fist up in Philly. What's this thing going to be? The answer is yes. And the reason why I just say yes, because it is all of that. They're going to make sound decisions. They're going to do right by infrastructure. They're going to be a place that's a destination place for players. They're going to have a good strength and conditioning program and think in their own way. They're going to deal with the media the same way they deal with their players behind the scenes, and that is with clarity and transparency and nothing to hide. They ain't scared about being vulnerable because exposing themselves to you doesn't do them any harm because they're that sure about who they are. And that's why they go and make a trade for a kid that's exactly the same way. So you get all of it. You get all of it. So what it tells me is it's all gas, no brakes. The vision is now clear for me that we're on a ride, man. This is about to be a ride. You hear me? That doesn't necessarily mean that the result is going to be what you want it to be or hope for it to be and what I think it's going to be. But just like I got all those clips and all of that video, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to create another one. And the one I'm going to create right now is this. For at least the next 5 to 7 years, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be a problem for a lot of people. Mark my words. I went through all of this to show you why I feel that way. This ain't about me being a Duval native. This ain't about me trying to get clicks. And it's not even about the fact that I'm trying to make people happy that I'm saying this. I'm saying it because I flat out believe it. And anybody that listens to this podcast or watches this podcast, wherever you get them, you know I don't do this unless I absolutely believe it. You better buckle your seatbelt up. There's a lot of good things coming here in Jacksonville. And I can't wait. And I hope you can't either. The picture is clear to me. If you want it a little bit clearer, go check out Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Both of those dudes know rosters. I'm going to tell you right now, I'll admit when somebody's better than me at something and they know these rosters and these players, all 90. I guarantee you they know all 90 players on every single roster in the National Football League. It'll make you a smarter fan. Go check it out. Make sure you check them out and get it wherever you get your podcast and make it your second listen. All right, man. I want y'all to feast on this. And let it marinate for a while and come back and see me next time here on Locked On Jaguars. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you later.